Hello, welcome back. I'm happy that you're joining me here today. Let's have a conversation, shall we, about what actually happens when you choose to see no separation at all. What, in fact, takes place when you choose by your own election to see that there is no separation of any kind. All right. So, as a little bit of backdrop to this conversation, which will be especially relevant if you have just tuned in here for the first time, or if you haven't tuned into these videos for a while, there is no separation at all. Let's use that as the backdrop for this entire conversation. And if you take nothing else out of the 20 or so minutes that this video will continue on, take that. Take it to heart. There is no separation of any kind. Here in the world, clearly we don't see it this way, which is why when you study and practice this course, you are invited and encouraged, and indeed, at your own willingness, learn to see otherwise. Our perception of the world is 180 degrees backwards. It's upside down. We don't see things as they are, which is why we're here on the spiritual path to begin with. Why would that be? Well, at some point, you have heard the call, so to speak, the call of our inner teacher to awaken, to embark on this thing that we refer to as a journey, a path, a walk. Call it the spiritual path. In fact, it doesn't matter what you call it, but you're here because at some point, whether you were consciously aware of it at the time or not, you formulated a thought that there's got to be more to it than just what's going on in our daily life. Clearly, clearly there is. That's the call of our inner teacher, quite simply, to embark on this journey to awaken. Along the way, ideas such as this one rise to prominence in our mind through our own allowance and acceptance of them, of course. Hence the repetition, because we're not willing at first to accept these ideas, or we want to accept them, but we're so reticent about it. We're so hesitant, nervous, freaked out, and afraid of truth that we want to deny it, and we want to delay, and we want to run off and hide, and perhaps criticize this course, criticize the pixelated image on your screen that's talking about it, criticize anyone and everything. We all do this. So to the extent that you find yourself doing this here on the path, no problem. And as long as you recognize what's really going on, then you have the present moment to make a different choice. We all do. We all do. For those of you that are new to A Course in Miracles, understand that it is a self-study curriculum. You take what you want to take at a given time. Let me add that you take what you're willing to take at a given time. So, in short, what happens when we allow ourselves to entertain the idea that there is no separation of any kind is that we heal. There you go. Right? We heal ourselves when we allow ourselves to see that there is no separation. What exactly do we mean there's no separation? We're not separate from our brother. It makes absolutely no difference that there appear to be 8 billion plus of us. We're not separate from our brother, and we're not separate from God. There is no separation of any kind. So, here in the world where we have drawn one division after another in our naming concepts, in all of our categorizations of our experience and our sub categorizations of our experience, every division and gradation that we've literally made from thin air, it's nothing. There is no separation of any kind. Each and every one of those divisions is completely artificial and lacking any reality at all. Here in the world, we have chosen to give it reality and call it reality, yet it's not. It's not. So we can simply choose to set that aside. It's a choice that you can make, perhaps today. We're invited here in the practice of A Course in Miracles to forgive and to forgive truly. This indeed is the practical moment to moment, day to day centerpiece of this course is our true forgiveness. So we're invited not to be deceived in our brother. We're invited to look at our brother and deny the separation in him. We're invited to overlook what happens on the surface, which could be troubling because we all judge. It could be egregious in some cases. That happens too. We're invited not to see our brother's separation and confusion as his reality, but rather to see his loving thoughts as his reality. Only his loving thoughts. The only thing here in this world of illusion, and by the way, this is a complete illusion, along with all of the other illusions, here in this world of illusion that we mistake for reality, the only thing that's actually real, the only thing that can be said to be real are our loving thoughts. So we're invited to look on our brother as he really is, loving. We're invited to see only his loving thoughts. What's real? His loving thoughts. All of his judgment is not real. We forgive that, set it aside. So the very important point here is there is no separation of any kind. So if you're doing this verbal math, and I hope that you are, when you see only your brother's loving thoughts, you see only your own loving thoughts. When you see your brother's judgment and blame, you see your own judgment and blame. There is no separation of any kind. How you look on your brother is how you look on yourself. How can we state this with 100% certainty? There is no separation of any kind. Your brother is you, is you. He's not similar to you. He's not a cousin twice removed on your father's side or whatever. Your brother is you. One. There is no separation of any kind, remember. So if we're to remember who we are naturally, we must learn to see our brother, i.e., ourselves, as we really are. Only our loving thoughts can be said to be real. So when we see our brother's mind as whole and loving and healed, we heal ourselves. Forgiveness is for you. Does it benefit the supposedly separate other people that you're forgiving? Of course it does. There is no separation of any kind. It's for you. This is how we wake up. The people often ask, and it's a very good question, because we've all been conditioned to see things completely backwards, the way that the world sees them, where when we give something, we appear to be out something. Well, giving is not loss. It's how we keep things. To extend love is how you keep love in your mind. To extend forgiveness is how we keep forgiveness in our mind. You give something away to keep it. This is different than the way the world sees it, where when you give someone something, you now lack that something. Well, guess what? There is no lack. Lack is a separation idea where one draws an artificial separation between themselves and the thing that they supposedly lack. And again, there is no separation of any kind. We're simply invited as we go forth and extend love to the Son of God, not to accept our brother's variable perception of himself, but instead look upon a unified perception, loving. How do we do this when our brother may be doing things that we disagree with or need to get away from? Because that definitely happens as well, doesn't it? We simply perform our forgiveness work in our own mind. It's for us, remember. Now, incidentally, somebody's behavior may not appear to change. Case in point, my own mother. This is a story that has come up before in many different videos, but so far, to date, and I'm 52 years old, this has been the biggest forgiveness lesson, the far biggest, far and away, the most impactful of my lifetime. So, so far. Yeah. The point behind all of this is for quick backdrop. My mother was a raging alcoholic and mean. So perhaps some of you can relate to that. Highly verbally and emotionally abusive. So it was one of those situations growing up. And of course, that dragged well into adulthood, in this case, middle age, i.e., my 40s. Can you relate to that? And at one point, I picked up this course and began to study and practice it. And of course, you can bet that when I knew, when I read and went through the workbook and knew that I would have to forgive her along with everything and everyone else, I initially thought, oh, come on, really? Well, yes, of course. The point is, forgiveness can be done in the mind while the other person's behavior can continue as they elect. Our forgiving someone their transgressions does not mean that they're going to stop. What that means is that we don't see it the same way at all. So it's not about changing anyone's behavior. It's about changing your mind. So as I forgave her, I became much more peaceful in my own mind. Did her behavior change? Unfortunately, no. Did that matter? No. What matters is your own peace of mind. You're doing this because this is what you want. Does it, in fact, benefit other people? Yeah, it does. It no doubt benefited her that I was calm for the last few years of her life. She passed away in 2016, and it could have been very different. I could have actively fought her and lambasted her and picked fights like I used to do when I was younger, with her especially. Did it benefit her that I was extremely calm? Yeah, of course it did. But the point is that not to change someone else's behavior. The point, again, is to change your mind. So when we refuse to accept our brother's wild, variable perception of himself, we change our own mind. Because as you see him or her, you see yourself. It's very important. Your brother is you. Remember, there is no separation of any kind. If you take nothing else out of this conversation, please take that. There is no separation, period. When you allow, emphasis on allow, yeah. Mhm. When you allow yourself to really, truly cogitate on that and stew on that idea and let it percolate, let it fester and brew and bubble around in your mind. When you really begin to think about the real implications of this, it is a game changer. There is no separation of any kind. If, again, you take nothing else, take that, and when you remember it, just think about it if that's all that you choose to do. You may choose to take that one step further and forgive the Son of God, who, by the way, is you. There is no separation of any kind. Love extends itself. God extends himself. You're not separate. There is no separation of any kind. This is what happens when you see this. You heal. Heal the mind. That's what this course is for. And in fact, it's what all spirituality is for. So let's go forth today and see no separation at all. See your brother as yourself. When he's acting up, it's a call for love. Cry for help if you want to see it that way. It is. Forgive. When he behaves lovingly, you're behaving lovingly. So extend love at all times. If your brother rejects you, it's not about you, right? Your brother is issuing a call for love. What's the appropriate response? Love. That's always the appropriate response. Okay, so thank you for tuning in here today. If you're new or newish to these discussions, you'll quickly gather that it's very, very, well, what we would call in the world deep, in depth. You know what? You deserve nothing less. So I'm certainly not going to dance around the central point that there is no separation of any kind. You deserve to hear this course presented as it is for what it in fact means. So, to the extent that you're willing and called to continue on, I invite you to stick around because these videos appear several times a week. By the way, they're not designed to be a substitute for your own learning here through your own reading of this material, through your own practical application of the ideas in the workbook. If you're going through the workbook, these videos are designed to give you encouragement to practice and to clarify and to simplify what we tend to complicate. All of the complication is completely unnecessary. So, along the way, because I'm here in a role as a guide, please feel welcome to ask questions. This is a natural part of the spiritual path, as I'm sure you've experienced, whatever your practice has looked like up till now. Any question is a good question when it comes to this course and your spirituality. So even if you feel that it's rather beginner level or basic, I invite you to ask those questions anyway, because there is somebody out there in this world with 25 or 30 years or more of experience studying this course that needs to hear the answer to that question. And you'll be helping someone that you're highly unlikely ever to meet in person. And that's very profound. It's very far reaching. It's very cool. And it proves that there is no separation of any kind. So let's use YouTube for the Holy Spirit's purposes to extend love to the Son of God. Shall we? Thank you. Yeah, let's do. Now, if you haven't yet subscribed, I'd love to have you subscribe and join us. This arrow in the corner of your screen is the prompt to do just that. So hover over that, click that. You'll be invited to subscribe and join us. Thank you to all of you who have recently done so. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I will see all of you again very soon. Well, I'll see you soon when my Zoom responds. It's being buggy. So you get a few extra seconds at the end. Yeah, that was the way the Holy Spirit drew it up. All right. Be seeing you.